Annie, it's Miss Melissa with Book Bites. We have to hurry because Ben Franklin just ran into the woods in the year 2020. So this is To the Future, Ben Franklin by Mary Pope Osborne, published by Random House, brought to you by the Cloud Library. We've got to go. Jack and Annie hurried into the woods. After Ben Franklin, they found him huddled beneath a tree. That was an airplane, said Jack. It won't hurt you and it won't fall from the sky. But why not? Said Ben. Jack only half remembered how airplanes flew. Well, it has an engine that pushes it forward, he said, and then air under the wings helps lift it up. It all works together. Somehow, said Annie. Oh my, said Ben. Does your world have many airplanes? Thousands, said Annie. Huge ones called jets. And rockets, said Jack. Some rockets can go all the way to the moon. Impossible, said Ben. I can see why that might seem impossible, said Annie. But those are everyday things to us. We don't even think about them, said Jack. Your world does not seem real to me, said Ben. The trees and the grass and the squirrels are real, but not lines that carry electricity and rockets that go to the moon. He wiped his face with his handkerchief. I fear there's no place for me here. I am a plain and simple man. No, you're not. You're a genius, said Annie. Not here, my dear, said Ben. My little inventions and experiments are nothing compared to carriages and that roar and machines that fly. I believe it is time for me to go home. Oh, wait. Have you made your decision about what you're going to do, said Jack. I mean, about signing the Constitution? No, but it doesn't matter whether I sign it or not, said Ben. We delegates think our ideas are so important, but I see now they matter very little in your world. That's not true at all, said Annie. They matter a lot. Ben smiled sadly. Children, please, lead me to the tree house, he said. But, said Annie. Please, said Ben, I want to go home. Jack looked at Annie. She nodded. Okay, said Jack. Follow us, Annie said gently. She and Jack started leading Ben back through the Frog Creek woods. Morgan was wrong, Annie whispered to Jack. She said our everyday wonders would show Ben the way. I know. They only confuse him, said Jack. He felt terrible. Not only had they failed to change Ben's mind about the Constitution, they'd also upset one of the world's greatest heroes. By the time they reached the treehouse, Ben looked pale and weary. I apologize for being such a bad guest, he said. You don't have to apologize, said Jack. We apologize. No, you've only been too kind, said Ben. Wait, Ben, said Annie. Before you go, there's something you really need to see. What? Jack whispered at her. Trust me, Annie whispered. Then she turned to Ben. I promise you like this. It's really, really great. Ben sighed. All right, lead me there, he said. This way, said Annie. Jack and Annie followed Ben through the woods to the sidewalk. As they headed up the street, the air felt hotter and more humid than ever. Is this place far away? Ben asked. No, it's just ahead, said Annie. See that building? She pointed to a brick building with tall, paned windows. This, of course, is our Oosterhout Library, but today we're going to pretend it is the Frog Creek Library. Oh, man, said Jack. Brilliant. Annie was taking Ben to the Frog Creek Library. Don't worry if people stare at you, Annie said to Ben. We'll tell them you're in rehearsals for a play and you're still wearing your costume. Ben looked puzzled, but he nodded and followed Annie and Jack up the library steps. Jack opened the front door and they all stepped inside. Ben took a deep breath. The cool air in this room is delightful, he said. Another invention? It is, said Jack. He usually didn't think much about air conditioning, but today it was definitely delightful. "And what a wonderful room," said Ben. The library walls were lined with books. People of all ages and colors sat in armchairs, reading books, magazines, and newspapers. Some were working on computers. "See what you started in Philadelphia?" Annie said. "Now we have free public libraries all over America, thousands of them, and they make a difference to all kinds of people." The librarian looked up from her desk. "Jack and Annie, hi!" "Miss Elaine, hi," they said. "You've brought Ben Franklin," Miss Elaine said, grinning. "What's going on?" "We're in rehearsals for a play," said Jack. "We just need to look some things up," said Annie, "to help our friend play his part." "Please, go ahead," said the librarian. "What play?" Ben whispered. "We'll show you," said Annie. She led Ben to a community bulletin board announcing community events. Jack pointed to a small theater poster. "See? Ben Franklin in Paris," he said. "You're famous in history. Actors have played you in musicals, movies, TV shows." "Movies? TV?" said Ben. "It's hard to explain," said Annie. "Your face is on the $100 bill," said Jack. "No," said Ben. "Yes," said Jack and Annie together. "I don't have a $100 bill to use as a prop." "My goodness," said Ben. "That is wonderful." Ben studied the other notices on the bulletin board. They announced church meetings, yard sales, bake sales, a fire station picnic, a 4th of July parade. "Open to all," Ben read at the top of the bulletin board. Then he looked around at the library. "This place is open to all, too, isn't it?" he said. "You have a wonderful community here, I can tell." "There are lots of libraries and communities like this everywhere," said Annie. "And so many children are reading," said Ben. "Where did they all learn to read?" "America has free schools for everyone," said Annie, "no matter how poor you are or where you come from. And girls get the same education as boys. At least 12 years for everyone," said Jack. Ben's eyes grew teary. "I would have liked that," he said softly. "There was so much I wanted to learn." "Well, wait until you see this," said Annie. She led Ben to a machine that he didn't recognize. "Please sit down." "What is this machine?" said Ben. "It's called a computer," said Jack. "A computer?" said Ben. He stared at the large desktop machine. "Yes, that's right," said Annie. "It's useful for learning all about the world. Lots of people even carry small computers in their pockets called smartphones." "Phones?" said Ben. "What are phones?" Hard to explain. Let's look at this computer now," said Jack. Jack and Annie grabbed chairs and sat next to Ben. "Watch," said Jack. He tapped a key and the screen lit up. Ben gasped. "Wait," said Jack. He did a search for the United States of America, and then he clicked on an entry. A map of the United States and the country's Great Seal appeared on the screen. The Great Seal of the United States. "Oh, how did that happen? Where did that come from?" said Ben. "That's hard to explain too," said Annie, "but read what it says." Ben read aloud softly from the screen. "The United States is a country of 50 states stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. It covers a vast part of North America. It has a population of more than 325 million people. Since its founding, immigrants from all over the globe have moved to the United States and become citizens." "My goodness," whispered Ben. Jack pointed to the Great Seal of the United States at the top of the screen. "That's a symbol of our country," he said. "I know that symbol," said Ben. "In 1776, I was on a committee that created it." He read the writing on the seal. "E pluribus unum." That's Latin for out of many, one. Right, out of many, one, said Annie. Our teacher told us what that means. The United States is made up of many different states and people from all over the world, but we are all one nation. Yes, yes, said Ben. I wonder if our delegates have forgotten those words. Probably, said Annie. People forget them in our time, too. It's so important to come together as a country, one country, said Ben. But how can we do that? We're very divided. Maybe the different sides have to keep talking to each other and listening to each other and agree to go forward, said Annie. She's right, said Jack. Don't forget, you can add important stuff later. It'll be called amendments, like amendments that guarantee freedom of speech and freedom of religion, and give women the vote, said Annie, and end slavery and give equal rights to everyone, said Jack. Yes, yes, that makes sense, Ben said. Perhaps creating the Constitution is only the first step, not the last. Exactly, said Jack. Ben stood up. I must go now. I must go home. I have to be back for the afternoon session. This Constitution is very important. They need me to be there. They need me to be there. And we do too, said Annie. Ben hobbled across the library and headed to the door. Goodbye, Ben, Elaine the librarian called. Have a good show. Readers looked up from their books and stared as Ben Franklin hurried outside. Jack and Annie caught up with Ben in front of the library. The three of them walked quickly to the sidewalk. My world may seem very rough and simple compared to yours, Ben said breathlessly, but it is filled with the discovery of new things and new ideas. Why, I can even help create a constitution that will change the history of the world. You can, said Annie. Of course there are parts I absolutely do not agree with, said Ben, but additions, as you said, and changes, amendments, will be made later. First, we must all come together to create one country. We may never get another chance. That's true, said Jack. This way, said Annie. She and Jack led Ben into the woods. In spite of the heat, Ben moved quickly through the trees. Here we are, Jack said when they reached the oak tree. Jack and Annie held the ladder steady. Ben tucked his walking stick under his arm and climbed slowly up. Next time, we'll complete Ben's journey home on Book Bites, To the Future Ben Franklin from the Oosterhout Virtual Library.